All right, welcome everyone to the Dairy Ray Classroom and chapter one of a series that we probably should have started the channel with, but better late than never. And that is our introduction to the Dairy Raid offense. My goal throughout this series is to give the average fan a better understanding of the mechanics and the execution of this offense from my point of view, so that you can enhance your game day experience and you know what you're seeing on TV, and it'll help you become a better informed fan. Uh, I want to emphasize this before we get into this is from my point of view. So it's what I see, it's how I think things are being developed. The ultimate guide to this would be Phil Longo, and if you ever have any questions about that, he would be the source on that. So we're going to get through it. So what we are going to be talking about today, we're going to go through chapter one. This is going to be our look at 4 basic passing concepts of the air raid offense, and that will be the mesh, the cross, the spot, and the vertical concept. So we're going to install them the way that I would install them, the way that I do it in my offense, a little more basic. And then from there, we'll talk about ways that the Badgers utilize these concepts in their offense in 2023 and going forward into this year, etc. All right. So, with that being said, to keep things simple here at the beginning, like I said, I'm going to install these plays and talk about them at the beginning of each play from a standard one formation against one defense, and talk about how I, as a coach, install these plays myself and how I progress through them. And then we'll go into some of the details that Phil Longo uses and how the way that he runs them are slightly different but effective in their own right. All right, so the first play that we are going to be going through here is the mesh concept. Okay, and we're going to start at where this play starts, and that is the mesh itself. So when we run mesh, we are going to run a crossing route here at about 5 yards with our strong side slot. This would be our Y. Put a name on that guy so we know it. Just so when we talk about these guys, we've got our Y, we've got our Z, we've got our H, we've got our X, and then our running back is the F. Okay, just so when I start referring to these players, you know who I'm talking about. All right, so our Y is going to set the top of the mesh. And what he's working is to flatten out at about 5 yards and work across the formation. That's the initial setup of the route. Our H is going to be running in tandem with that, and he's going to be running his cross at about, so they meet about the middle of the field. Okay, and he wants to get as tight underneath the Y's route as possible. The Y is always going to set the top of the mesh. So if for any reason he gets pushed down, the Y needs, or the H, needs to compensate and get under the route. Okay, so this mesh right here between these two players is the core of the concept. How the rest of the players work in this, we'll go through here. So what we do, our Z, I run him what we call a burst corner. Okay, so I want to get a good inside release. Okay, 3 to 4 steps, 3 to 4 yards, depending on where we are. I want him to get vertical, and then I want him breaking back to the sideline. And we can adjust this, changes at his launch angle, etc., depending on coverage and depending on what we see. But we're not going to go too crazy with that right now. Okay, and then our X, he's going to be running a runoff fade on the backside, and then our running back, our F, is going to be bubbling out to the quote-unquote play side. All right, so this is the basic structure of the mesh concept. Now let's start working about reads and how we're going to progress through this concept. All right, so the first read that we need to be looking at is between the Y and the H on their mesh. And what happens if we get man coverage, they're just going to run through. They're going to run through, they're going to get through their mesh, and they're going to be working out towards the sideline. Now, one little thing that they will do is as they clear the box, they're going to start gaining just a little bit of depth as they're working to the sideline. This just creates more space and makes it a little bit easier to get the ball to the outside. Okay. Now, if they encounter zone, which is what we're hoping for, is that as soon as they clear the mesh, they're looking to sit down in the first gap that, or the first space that they see in the defense. Okay, so we're just going to highlight these guys in red to make this a little bit easier. So typically, if we're going to get this kind of shell here, this cover 4-ish or 2-read shell, what we would have happening is we'd have deep cover or quarters, quarters, quarters. The nickel would be dropping seam curl flat, and the Mike would either be dropping over the middle or out, and then the will linebacker will be doing the same thing, seam curl flat on the weak side. That's going to create holes in the zones, and that's where we're trying to hunt with our mesh routes. I'm just going to adjust his mesh a little bit, just so we're a little bit more down the middle, so this is a little more accurate. Try one more. Again, we're doing this on the fly. It'd be easier if I had these drawn up ahead of time, but that again would be too easy. Close enough. All right, meshing out there. So what they're going to be doing, they're going to clear the middle point of the mesh, and then they're going to sit down in the first open space they see. And we're typically, that's going to be about the B gap to the C gap, depending on what we have on either side. So they're going to hunt, sit down in a hole. Okay, so that's the read portion of this route. Now let's talk about the progression, okay, and how we get to who the open receiver is. Now, with the air raid, we're not reading coverage. It's important to understand the structure of coverage, but it takes away, if we really dissect coverage and try to anticipate too much, it takes away from the core of the air raid, which is to create horizontal and vertical stresses and get the ball in space. It's more about what our guys are doing than what their guys are doing. So that being said, our progression on mesh is going to be Z to the mesh, and most likely it's going to be the one coming out of the mesh to the running back. Okay, so this would be the progression here. 1 to 2 to 3. Our quarterback is going to take a 3-step drop. Okay, and in Phil Longo's terminology, this would be a casual 3. As he is going through, by the time his top foot hits the ground, or the top of his drop hits the top, his foot hits the top of the drop, excuse me, we've already made the decision if we're going to hit this burst corner right here. And what we would be doing here is, as he gets to the top of his stem, there's space at the top of the stem to either throw him open towards the sideline or over to the corner. So by the time we get to the top of the drop, that decision needs to be made. So when the foot's to the ground, the ball's in the air. If he's not there, then we're looking to the space occupied by the H, and he's either going to be running out or he's going to be sitting down. So that would be number 2. So we're 1, 2. 2 is covered. We look to get the ball to our outlet route, which is our check to the running back on the bubble. Okay. If we are coverage reading this, in a more traditional sense, then it would be this nickel outside linebacker would be the read beyond the burst corner. So basically, if he settles inside or out, we'll throw either the mesh or the bubble. Backside, we basically have escape routes, or if we get man coverage, and we identify man by alignment. So if this nickel is right here, we have a better understanding that it's man. If we like the matchup, we'll peek here and then we'll read mesh to fade on the backside if we like individual matchups on the backside. If we don't, we tend to go through the 1, 2, 3 progression to the side that we have already got all of our 3 receivers on the same side. Okay, so that's the basic ideas here. If we get any kind of blitz inside here or here, then we're going to go hot to one of our meshes or swing it out to the bubble. Since we're running 5-man protection, 4 down, 1 comes, we're okay with it. 2 comes, we got to go hot, and that's again either going to be to one of the meshes or the swing to the running back. All right, so that is how I would install and run the mesh in my system. Now let's take a look at how Phil Longo will run the mesh with the Badgers. All right, now that we've installed a basic version of the mesh, let's take a look at and install a version of the mesh that Phil Longo ran this season with the Badgers. This is coming from the Buffalo game. One of the early examples I could find of the play. And we're going to go from here. So, all right, so we've got the correct personnel on the field. So the mesh starts. We're going to have Tucker Ashcraft working across the field. He gets a depth at about 6, 7 yards by the time he completely clears the formation. Skylar Bell's coming underneath. He's not running as tight as I would normally run mesh, but he's getting underneath. They do cross at about the middle of the field, but Tucker definitely gets deeper, and Skylar flattens out a little bit earlier. Okay, so something maybe more like that. Let's fix this just a little bit. So Tucker's going to work a little deeper so he can work out as he's coming across the field. All right, so that's the top of the mesh. Out here, instead of running a corner with Chimere DK, he actually runs a dig, and he's looking to come inside. He'll probably, if he didn't get man coverage, he's probably, again, looking for a soft spot, and he'll probably look to sit down at some point in there. But for now, that's what he's running. He's just running a dig. Okay, and then on the backside, CJ Williams, he's releasing outside the numbers, and he's going vert. Okay, with our running back, the variation that we're getting here, he runs more of a flat wheel, and he's working to get like this. Okay, but similar concept. All right, so the route progression, looking at how it's getting set up here, okay, we're going to get the same 3-step drop, and we're going to be working mesh to dig to wheel. That's the order that it looks like we're going for. Now, when we see the film version of this, and we will in a little bit, we're going to see that Tanner Mordecai actually comes out here and he gets a little bit too focused on Tucker Ashcraft, and then Ashcraft is not very comfortable about where to sit down and how to maintain his speed. But that's a real-world application, and we're going to show in our real-world applications, we're going to show both positive ones and negative ones. So, but again, route progression, mesh, running versus man, dig, curl, top of the screen, and then running the wheel up the sideline as an outlet. So we're going to be basically doing 1, 2, 3. We would go backside if we had the matchup that we liked, and he took a little bit long to get through the mesh, and also we didn't quite break the press out here. So here we go. This is a real world example of how to run the mesh. And now we're going to move on to start talking about our next play in this series, and that would be the cross, or the Y cross, if we want to be more specific. Okay, so the next play we're going to take a look at in our installation is the cross. And the mesh and the cross have similar ideas, but we're working at different levels. And we're going to start here with the Y cross. And again, terminology doesn't matter much. It could be the Y, it could be the H. Players are the same, doesn't really matter. So, but what we are doing is we are sending a player on a cross field crosser, basically. And the way that I install and I teach it is that the person we're crossing, in this case our Y receiver, he wants to work underneath the first defender and then over the second, so that by the time he gets to the hat, or he clears the formation on the other side, gets to the hash mark, he'll level out at about 10 yards. Height can vary, but for me, I give a landmark of 10 yards. It's pretty easy for my guys to find. Okay, so that is the landmark for that route. And so let's go through the progression. So what we start with is we actually start with our H, and he's going to be running a 3 to 5 yard choice route. And if he gets to his landmark and he has no coverage, he's going to sit down. If he has coverage, he's going to break away from it. And 9 times out of 10, he's going to be breaking away from the coverage. Second route in the option in the progression is going to be the Y. And what we're trying to do here is we're trying to create a high-low stress on this outside linebacker, or inside linebacker. It's either he's going to be working hook to curl, so we're going to either be looking to throw it over or under, depending on which one of these guys threatens him the most. Okay, that's how we're going to be paying attention to it through the eyes of looking at coverage. When we're looking at air raid progression, we're just thinking open space. If he's sitting there uncovered in open space at 3 to 5 yards, we're going to nail that all day. And when we start nailing that all day, that's going to widen and shorten this linebacker, which is eventually going to take this space away, but it's going to open up this space. Okay. Next in the progression would be this dig route. Again, he's hunting for space. He'll work across. If we've got zone, he'll look to sit down in the wake of the Y. And then we got a running back on a outlet check down. And we're going to talk more about why he might be doing the same thing a lot, but why it's important that he does what he's doing there. The first thing we're going to look at, we're going to go back to go forward, is we're going to peek outside here to the X. Quarterback's going to just look out there. If we get any kind of sitting down low, or we break coverage right away, we'll chuck it up there. But that's going to be a quick pre-snap kind of look. Otherwise, we're going to continue on our 3-step drop, hit the top. We're going to work check to choice, or to cross, to dig, and then outlet to the running back. All right? So that's how I run it. Let's take a look at how Phil Longo runs it. All right, let's take a look at our Phil Longo example of how he runs a variation of the Y cross. And this is taken from the Washington State game. And again, we're going to install it here. I'm going to break it down as it would be done correctly in a perfect world. And then again later, as we're going to see how it actually developed when it was done in real time. So first things first, in the backfield, we're not going to actually send everybody in the route. We're going to send a little play action just right here. Stick it down here. That is to try to hold linebackers and bring guys down. And then that is going to allow Skylar Bell to work under the first defender, over the second. And he's actually looking for a landmark at about 15 yards. That's a really ugly drawn crosser. Let's try this again. Do a little bit better this time. Landmark. Not much better, but you get the idea. Okay, getting across the field, and again, they're running it from the far hash over to the pylon on the other side. Okay, so that is that route. First things first, before I forget, we have Hayden Rucci on motion, and then post snap, he is going to take off and wheel up the sideline. Okay, route progression. CJ Williams is going to be running a shallow cross. He's going to be our first read. Then we're going to be working the cross, and then we're going to be working Bryson Green on a dig. Again, it's probably more of a hunt route. So again, progression, play action. Okay, we're going to get a quick drop after that. The play action extends the drop, but we shorten the steps to get it quicker to make up the time that we've lost on the play action. And we'll be working X underneath to the cross, to the dig, and then outlet to the wheel. Okay, so we're trying to create high-low stress. That is the key component of a route combination. And again, we got a coverage indicator he went with here. So it's essentially a man. We read space. Do we win the route? We throw it here. No. Okay, we go over the top. We look for the cross and we look for the dig. Okay, and this actually resulted in a touchdown for the Badgers, one of the better throws of the season. All right, so that is the crosser. Next, we're going to be moving on, and we're going to be talking about the spot concept. Okay, so here we are with the spot concept. And the spot concept it falls under the category of what I call triangle read. And basically what we are trying to do is we're trying to put a defender between the point of three different receivers and creating both a horizontal and a vertical stress on that defender, and then essentially figuring out where he goes from there. We find the soft spot. All right, so the way that I run this here, we're running these, basically call the snag concept, but it falls into the spot route category out here. So our Z receiver, he's going to be running a slant. He gets any kind of man coverage or this corner runs with him, he's just going to continue on with his slant across the field. If not, he feels zone. He wants to sit down as soon as he gets to the hallway or the stem of the Y receiver, the slot. He's going to be working to the corner, or again, based on leverage of the free safety, he is going to work out. Okay, and then finally, again, we have another swing route from the running back. I want him really working for width. Okay, so I want him working fast and wide. Okay, so for me, that creates the 3 points of the triangle. We've got the inner, we got the top, and we got the bottom. So bing, bam, boom right there. That would be the defender that we're stressing. Backside, we have essentially a two-man combo here for either if the quarterback has to escape the pocket or we get something hot on the backside, we work seam to the 10 out, come back on the backside. All right, so that's how we install the spot snag concept. Let's take a look at how Phil Longo does it. Okay, so let's take a look at a Phil Longo example of the spot concept. Coach Longo really loves to run this type of concept out of condensed formations and especially out of a 3x1 trip set. All right, so let's work it here. Let's work it from the bottom of the triangle to the top. So CJ Williams here, he's going to be working the spot. He's going to be working to find the soft spot between the nickel outside linebacker and the middle linebacker. Okay, and that's where we can see that Tanner Mordecai's eyes are going first on his drop. This is a quicker drop, but that's where he's working. Okay, we have Hayden Rucci. He's basically just going to be working a fade. He's going to get to the hash mark, and then he's just going to get vertical. Okay, and then we've got Skylar Bell running kind of a delayed flat. So he's going to come up, kind of hesitate for a second to kind of read how this guy here is moving, and then he's going to take himself out into the flat. And that's actually, in this case, where the ball ends up. So he reads 1 to 2 to 3. And then on the backside, in case we get a good matchup, we got Chimray on that burst corner that we saw earlier from the mesh concept. And there we go. All right, so again, route progression-wise, we're looking 1 to CJ, 2 to Skylar, which in this case is where the ball went, and then 3 up the, it's essentially up the seam, but he's basically running a fade route here to Hayden Rucci. So there we go. That is a Phil Longo example of the spot snag concept. So the last concept we're going to take a look at here is often the most misunderstood route concept in the air raid, and it's also one of the most simply effective plays if done correctly. And it's a call that you see a lot, but you don't realize it's the same call because of how the moving parts change what they're doing based on what they read and leverage. And this play is the verts, the 4 verts, 5 verts, depending on what type of receivers we have out there, and we're going to go from there. All right, so with the verts, the first part, I mean, it's in the name. We are sending 4 players vertical. Okay, 4. And they each have landmarks. Okay, and we're going to talk about the landmarks here in a second if I can get my drawing to work correctly. All right, so we got our verts. Let's talk about what we're doing to get there and what we're doing post-snap. All right, so our outside receivers, their landmark is typically right, for me, is right outside the numbers, the bottom edge of the numbers facing the sideline. Okay, that's where we want to take off. That's where we want to run our stem. Okay, when we get to our landmark, and for me, my landmark is 10 yards. If we are running with the defender or the defender is behind us, we're going to continue going vertical. If we get a situation where we're running off and this corner is sagging or he's playing looser and we get to 10 yards and that corner is above us, then we are going to break down and break back to the sideline, okay, on a comeback route. And again, I have it at 10 yards. Okay, our slot receivers have similar ideas, different landmarks. So for me, their landmarks are the hash marks. We want to get vertical to the hash marks, and then when we get to 10, we're going to make our leverage read. Okay, and for me, I vary them a little bit just so we can get some variation. Okay, and I have my Y. He gets to the hash mark. He has leverage. He's going to sit down inside the hash mark and curl up. My H, which tends to be my faster receiver, if he gets to the landmark and he is capped over the top, then what he's actually going to do is he's going to break to the post. Okay, so those are the route progression there. And then a running back, he is going to be setting up for pass protection, and he's thinking 1001, 1002, and then he is going to break out to either sideline depending on where we are on the field. Usually I want him breaking towards the field on whatever side that we're on. All right, so that is the route. Now let's talk about the progression. The way that I teach the progression is I essentially tell my quarterback to find the weakest corner, the corner that we want to target with a vertical throw, and work from him across the field. Okay, so if for example, let's say here, we have our strong side receiver, Z, running at this corner. This guy's weak. This is going to be a guy we're working across. We're going to be working 1 to 2 to 3, or 1 to 2 to 3, depending on how much time we have in the pocket. And then the receiver, the other receiver, or potentially the running back is the outlet if we have to take it out of the pocket. All right, so that's how we set up the 4 verts. Now let's take a look at how Phil Longo does it. All right, here we are. So this is going to be an example of the four verts that we ran against LSU in the ReliaQuest Bowl and how we ran the progression. All right, so we got our receivers out here. It's pretty similar to how I drew it up. It's just landmarks are a little bit different, and how we're breaking comes out of this is a little bit different. All right, so outside receivers, we're still looking at about 10, and they really work downhill. These are more curls, outbreaking curls than comebacks. They're really working to get downhill. Okay, our wide receivers, they're looking to get deeper. They're looking at, depending on leverage, either inside or out, and working at to about 15 to the top of their landmark. Okay, so we're working here, and then we're working to get a little bit more inside leverage here. And again, when they get to their leverage point, they're going to break downhill. They're going to break inside. Okay, and this is exactly what we saw here. So we worked basically here. We dropped back and we waited for this to open up, since this is going to open up first. Stepped up a little bit and got the ball quickly outside to Vinny Anthony for this one. But even though this looks like all curls, again, if they have the leverage, they're going to take off and run. But it's all about where those defenders are to determine if we're going to break down or if we're going to keep running. And there we go. All right, so that is how we draw up the various ways that we run these concepts in the Dairy Raid offense, in my personal offense, and how Phil Longo does it. Now what we're going to do is we're just going to take a second to take a look at these 4 plays that I broke down at Phil Longo. We're going to watch them. We're going to talk about them and talk about the execution and how it could have maybe done better, or if it hit, what could have gone wrong. Okay, because I don't want to just show, I could scour the plays for the season and find perfect examples of everything, but I want to show real world applications and how us as an offense can get better once we get more comfortable with the system. So let's take a look at these plays on film. All right, so here we are in huddle, and in the film we want to take a look at these plays that we just drew up, and where we talk kind of about the perfect world installation process and progression of the play. And we're going to show real world examples of what happened during the season. And like I said, some of these plays are not going to be pretty, and we're going to talk about how we can fix them. And if they were done correctly, it would have had a much better outcome, obviously. So, all right, so here we are. This is our example of the mesh. This comes from the Buffalo game, okay, and right off the bat, this leads to an interception, but we're going to see an important reason why. All right, so we're in a 2x2 set as we drew up. Going to start the play here. We're working mesh coming across the field. Okay, so mesh would be number 1. Dig curl would be number 2. Wheel would be number 3. And where this play goes wrong is Tucker Ashcraft slows down. He needs to keep running to the sideline. And it is his change of speed as Tanner Mordecai is throwing that really kills this. Now, also, I don't like that he looks mesh both here and back and then comes back. I really wish he would have picked one off the bat and just went through there. Now, this one here, as soon as we see these 2 defenders sitting here, we don't want to wait. We want to have it come across. So if Tucker kept running, I think this could have been open right there. But it is what it is. All right, so there's a real-world example of the mesh. All right, next up, we've got the cross. This is from Washington State. This actually led to a touchdown. Okay, so we're going to have motion coming across. We're going to send that little play action, and then we're going to be working the crosser. Now, we lose a battle out here in pass protection, but that doesn't change how the play is designed. Okay, we're going to step up in the pocket. Route progressions. Again, the ball would have been there, even if we didn't have to work across the field because of poor pass protection. But route concepts is there. Again, we'll be working from Skylar to Bryson, and then if we were able to stand tall in the pocket, we would have worked CJ on the cross to Skylar to Bryson, and then maybe to Hayden Rucci on the backside. All right, so there we go. That is a real-world example of the cross. Now let's take a look at the spot concept. This is against Georgia Southern. Again, 3-by-1 look. CJ Williams is going to sit inside. Skylar Bell is going to delay a millisecond, and then he's going to break out with Hayden Rucci running up the side or running up the rail. And again, we just want to get that ball in space quickly. 1, no, 7. 7's always wrong in this squash. He hesitates inside. We throw it outside. Okay, nice little pitch and catch. Easy yards. And again, we had a whole shot over the top if we wanted to take it. But we read 1, 2, 3 and don't want to get greedy. Okay. And then finally, we have our vertical concept that we ran against LSU. So again, we're going to be reading bottom of the screen to the top. And again, we liked it. We're just going to let it settle. We're reading outside. We've got the spacing. He's just waiting for him to hit the landmark and then come downhill. Okay, he knows the route's going to be open. Okay, and then we'll run vertical over top of everybody else. Get to our landmarks and sit down. If we have the shot, we take it. If not, we sit down. And that's what we did. And we got okay yards on this. All right, and that is our first chapter in the journey to learning the air raid, dairy raid offense. Next time we come out, we're going to spend some time talking about a more philosophical concept, and that is, why are there so many swing routes and checkdowns to the running back in this offense? Certainly, there is a more efficient way for them to get involved in the offense and a better way for them to get involved in the offense. Is there? We'll find out. So we'll see you next time. Thank you for watching.